Do you comment on items not appearing on our agenda today? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the agency business. And first item on the agenda is a consent calendar. Anyone wish to remove items that are on consent or discuss them?
Motion to approve consent.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Project update, Mr. Deemer.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Marble and board members. Today we wanted to update the board on our finance and funding and our construction update, and then spend some time talking about our public outreach and education program, and then finally our dedication plaques and the timing of our ribbon cutting event. It's an interesting time. We're continuing to do very well on the implementation of the project, and we're actually starting to wind down the major construction, and this January now we're moving into the commissioning phase. So a lot of the manufacturers' representatives are out checking the equipment, making sure that it's ready to start up. In the next 6 weeks or so, the CH2M Hill will start to run the equipment and move water in a loop through the system. So transitioning from construction to commissioning and ultimately startup of the facilities. In terms of financing, we continue to make good progress with our SRF loan agreements. Woodland has received about 68% of their $111 million to date, and Woodland has received 64% of their $95.5 million. The process is very much mechanized at this point, so we're getting routine submittals of disbursement requests and then routine receipt of those requests. Now, the big news in terms of the financing is we have now secured our $40.2 million in grant funding. That's the full amount that we have been seeking for the past 4 years. And we got very good news a couple weeks ago, actually last week, that we had received $8.1 million in Proposition 1 grant funding from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. With that $8.1 million, we now have our full $20.1 million from the state, and as previously reported, we've received a similar amount of commitment from the feds. In terms of, it's not supposed to be there. Somehow this is out of seat. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. So the joint intake project, in terms of construction, we continue to make progress at the joint intake. They're in the process of installing the major mechanical equipment. They have removed the trestle that was used to install the cofferdam and for the major concrete pours, and they have completed the tie-in of the agency's raw water line. So this is a picture of the top of the intake facility. You can see that the pumps are now installed. This is a pallet of concrete masonry units that's going to be actually build a housing over the pumps. This is a picture of the intake structure with the forms removed. You can see the cofferdam in place here. This is looking from the north to the south, and you see the I-5 bridge in the background. And this is a photo of the intake facility with the cofferdam removed. So the building, the concrete masonry unit building goes on top of the pumps. The pumps are shown here. In terms of the regional water treatment facility, as I mentioned, winding down on the construction and moving into commissioning, continuing work on the operations and maintenance buildings, continuing to finish up the installation of and construction of the drying beds. And through the end of December, the construction is 89% complete, and the agency's been invoiced for a total of $129 million. Just some photos of the treatment plant site. This is the backwash equalization basins undergoing hydraulic testing. This is a photo of the filter gallery and the piping that's going in and the painting of the pipes that's starting to occur. This has out in the drying beds forming of the decant structure walls. This is one of the last structural concrete pours that needs to take place. This is an inside photo of the operations building. You can see that the drywall's in, the doors, the windows, HVAC, the ceiling, so we're getting very close to having the CH2M Hill operations staff move in. They're weather permitting, grading the internal roadways on the for the plant, installing the curb and gutter, and hope to have the final paving put down as soon as the weather allows. This is a photo of the ancillary facility site. This is adjacent to, immediately south and west of the intake facility. This is where the agency has an emergency generator that's been installed. This is a surge tank that has also been installed, so good progress being made at this site as well. In terms of off-site pipeline construction, all the pipeline work was completed in September. And another milestone, we've completed the paving restoration on County Road 22. That's been completed and signed off by the county. And County Road 103, the paving has been complete, and we're down to a punch list of items with the county. Upcoming activities and milestones, the list gets smaller in terms of the utility coordination and the permitting. We're still working with PG&E to get power to the last of the off-site facilities, in particular the metering station for Davis, which is on County Road 102 across from the photovoltaic yard there. And then permitting, ultimate goal is to get our permit to operate, and that permit application is going in the next few days. And then we are working with the state board to get a permission to install and run the temporary pumps until the joint intake is completed. So our schedule milestones, as I said, we're in the commissioning phase for the project. This highlight the two items in red. The initial water deliveries to the city are currently scheduled to begin May 16th. They'll go through a extensive acceptance test, they being CH2M Hill. If they pass that acceptance test as planned, the operations period of the contract will begin on June 9th. And then we anticipate the joint intake being done a short time later in August. And then finally, our project cost, the numbers have not changed, same as you've seen for the past several months. We're still projecting the total regional cost at $204.5 million. Wanted to, if there's no questions on the construction or the financing, wanted to talk a little bit about our public outreach plan, and Kim Floyd is here as well if the board has input or questions in terms of how we proceed with our plan. So we've been working with the two cities and have established an outline for an outreach program. That program would have the goals and objectives listed on this slide. We see the agency supporting the cities and UC Davis in their efforts to prepare and implement public outreach and education program per the State Division of Drinking Water Directive. So the State Division of Drinking Water, the former Health Department, has sent a letter to both cities outlining things they want to see in place before the surface water is introduced. And one of the things that they're asking for is that each city, and in concert with the agency, prepare a public outreach and education program. So as part of that effort, we want to make sure that we're promoting customer awareness of the conversion from groundwater to surface water, and we want to support the cities and UCD's efforts to inform the customers of what to expect when the surface water is introduced. Any anticipated changes in the aesthetics, some of the pipe flushing activities that are going to be taking place in the city to make sure that the customers understand what's taking place and why. Want to reemphasize the benefits and the safety of the treated water, surface water. And then we want to also make sure that customers understand if they have any concerns or questions, how they can contact the cities and/or the agency to get answers to their questions. We've identified the audiences for our outreach plan shown on this slide. Obviously, the water customers, the staffs in the two cities, the city councils, the board of the Clean Water Agency, community groups, chambers of commerce, Rotary, water advisory committees. And here's where we want to really coordinate closely with the cities and make sure that we have a coordinated message and we're able to reach all of the audiences that the cities, quite frankly, have a much longer standing relationship with. And then obviously the neighborhood associations and multicultural organizations. In terms of the activities and the venues that we anticipate, regular reports and update to the board and to the city staff. Envision a series of bill inserts, fact sheets, presentation aids, postings to our website, etc. Identified preliminarily 3 media releases that would cover the timelines, when the surface water is coming, anticipated water aesthetics, the purpose of the conversion, the related activities like flushing. And then in talking with the public works directors and with the city staffs, we thought public workshops, perhaps one in each city in advance of the conversion to the surface water would be appropriate. And then finally, closer toward the startup of the project, arrange for tours for interested groups. This is a public outreach timeline. We want to get started in the 3rd week in February with our outreach materials, prepare a frequently asked questions, get that widely distributed, posted on our website, tentatively planning for bill inserts, 1st week in April, 1st week in March, and you can see community meetings, April and March, and then the tours as we get into the
I think you mean May.
delivery. Did I say March?
2 M's.
March and May, yeah. So April and May, thank you. And so this is kind of just an overview of how over the next 3.5 months we would begin to get the education materials out and interface with the various customer groups. So I want to pause there and see if the board has any questions for staff or for Kim in terms of what we're planning, any particular emphasis that you'd like to see as we go forward in finalizing this outline.
I have one. I'm probably premature. I had asked Greg to give a presentation at my Rotary Club the beginning of next month. Is that okay to do? Okay, cool. If we have any materials available by then, that would be helpful.
I think it would be, if there are particular needs like that, if we could know the timing of those events, then we can adjust some of the materials that we've identified here to make sure that we have them done in time for those events.
Great, thank you.
We'll be outreaching to Aqua, NAQUA, RWA.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And I'd say, Kim, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this point? No? Greg or Bob? So I think this is a bit unusual compared to what we've been doing in the past. This is really going to require close coordination with the cities because the cities are the ones that have the relationships with the customers, the knowledge of the distribution system. So very much the agency is going to be in a support role, making sure that we have a consistent message and then helping the cities distribute that message. Okay. Finally, the last topic to discuss this afternoon is our ribbon cutting event. I've noted here that we've scheduled it for July 2016 tentatively, which is 4 to 6 weeks after the deliveries begin. But there is no magic with that date. The only magic is we have to get the right month on our dedication plaques. The other alternative that we've identified is September or even October. It's really a board preference in terms of what the board would like to do. And we want to kind of want to get the direction and the input from the board so that we can finalize our plans and start the actual detailed planning.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, so I think Bill is probably too modest to ask us to have it slightly earlier, but I think I would really like to be able to have this event with Bill in attendance. So I'm not sure when Bill is moving to his next destination, I guess in Peru. But maybe if I would be very open to trying to schedule it so Bill could be at the ribbon cutting. I think, as all of us would agree, that Bill has been instrumental in actually getting this project through the long process to actually be completed.
Okay.
So I guess, Bill, what would be a comfortable
I wouldn't hold it up
timeframe?
on my account or prolong it, but whatever works best for everybody is fine with me.
I think it was my understanding, Dr. Marble, that you're going to be here until the first week in July.
It's looking more like last part of June.
So
We don't have a final date yet,
I
but
think if the board would like to do it in June, there's certainly, that can certainly be accommodated.
I would like to, and
Okay.
I would like to schedule it so that there's a little bit of cushion, so that if Bill's schedule changed slightly, that he's still able to attend. So I would think something along the lines of mid-June.
We would support that, too.
Good. So we'll continue to watch the construction schedule carefully and make sure that once we get the final information from Dr. Marble, we'll propose some dates and get it out to the board. But it's looking like sometime in June so that Dr. Marble can attend the event.
Well, we could wait till December and he could fly home for just...
watch monsoon number 2 happen.
And it might be a little bit of a difficult scheduling exercise, but I think it might be nice to extend the invitation to any other former board members who have been involved. I'm thinking of specifically Joe Cravoza, and there have been a couple others, and see whether they're able to make the specific date. And if they're not able to, but perhaps if we're able to pick something that works for the largest number of people, with priority, of course, given to the current board members and Bill.
And Director Lee, that's in fact our intention is once we establish a date, we really want to make sure we get the word out and get as many of the people that have contributed to the project invited, and hopefully they can attend.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to dedication plaques. This is the very difficult assignment for staff because it's always a challenge to get it just right. So we've been working again with the Public Works directors on how best to recognize all of the individuals that have contributed to the project. So we've come up with 3 ways to do that. And the first way is what we're recommending is a traditional bronze plaque that will be mounted at the exterior entrance to the operations building. So in front of you, you have mock-ups of that traditional plaque. And consistent with the traditional plaque, it recognizes the board members that are in office at the time that the treatment facility is dedicated. So the difficulty with that is, as Director Lee's already mentioned, there's a lot of people that have come before the current board that have made significant contributions. That's the first plaque. We'd ask for the board to look at that. If you concur with that, make sure we've spelled the names right. Some people like a middle initial, sometimes some people like their full first name, some people like an abbreviated first name, so we want to make sure we get that right. Have we got the right people on the plaque, and do we spell the names correctly? The second plaque is what is a little more comprehensive. It would be a plaque that we would mount inside the building, and you have a mock-up of that as well. It would have a listing of all of the people since the inception of the Joint Powers Authority that have contributed to the project, both past board members and as well as staff and consultants. So a little broader recognition with that second plaque. And then finally, we would envision at the ribbon cutting ceremony, we'd assemble all of the people that have contributed to the project. We'd take a photo, and we would have a index naming all the individuals in the photo, and we would mount that inside the building as well. So this is the current view of the operations building. It hasn't, haven't got all the finishing touches on it, but the traditional plaque would go on the outside of the building right here. This is the main entrance. And then this is a plan view of the operations building. So this is the wall here where that traditional plaque would be mounted outside the building. And these other two plaques that I mentioned, the broader recognition plaque of all of the past contributors and the ribbon cutting ceremony photo, would be on the inside of the building on this wall here. So as soon as you entered the building, in the lobby of the building, you'd have those other two plaques. So staff thought before we go any further with our dedication plaque plans, we ought to check in with the board and get your thoughts, get your input. And if you are in agreement with the concept that we're proposing, ask you to check over particularly that second plaque, the first two plaques, but in particular the second plaque with all of the folks that have made contributions. Make sure we get everybody that needs to be recognized on that second plaque. And with your concurrence, we'll proceed to with the preparation of the plaques as I just described. So we don't need to get any comments you have now are certainly welcome, but if you want to take time to study it and provide feedback after you've had a chance to think about it and look it over, that would be welcome as well.
Paul?
Just a quick question. Any thought of somehow recognizing the agencies that assisted with the funding for the project, starting with the Davis and Woodland ratepayers, but if we're doing a city project, we say, thanks to bond measure X or certain, but there's a lot of funding that went into it and a lot of funding agencies, and I don't know where that fits into the recognition.
I think it's a great idea. I hadn't thought of it, but there's no reason why we couldn't include recognition of the funding agencies as well.
Other questions? I think we're all in agreement on that one.
Okay. Good. So I know a lot of you have been involved in the project for quite some time, so if you could just look over particularly the names on that second plaque and make sure we haven't missed anybody, that would be much appreciated.
So, just one question. In terms of individuals' names being formal name, proper name, middle initial, you're not trying to standardize it. It sounds like you're just leaving it up to each individual.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
However you would like your name displayed is what we're after.
Is JT Bona Hilliard okay? Is that?
Yeah, and nicknames are okay too. We can put those in quotation marks. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Do we want to move to the next item? I think.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think that's budget.
Yes. So I think this, I can keep this fairly brief. I think it's good news and no surprises, really. I can find the... No. This one? Okay. So as we've done for the past couple of years, we wanted to just take a mid-year look at our budget, make sure that it's adequate to complete the work for the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year. So just as a reminder, the board approved the FY16 budget in the amount of $89.9 million last June. Since that time, staff has continued to monitor the budget and most recently has reviewed the actual expenditures, actual invoices through November of last year, done a projection of what we are going to incur in December, and then used that factual information to project expenditures for the remainder of FY16. For the operating budget, we're requesting an increase of $523,000. $353,400 is associated with the acceleration of the operation schedule, which is currently projected to begin June 9th, and $169,000 is associated with the operation of the temporary pumps. So what happened here is that when we put the budget together last June, we projected that we would start operations after July 1st of this year, the start of the next fiscal year. So we did not have any funds for the operation of the system in the current fiscal year budget, but the current schedule shows us going into the operations period on June 9th. So the $523,000 will allow us to have funds budgeted as we enter the operations phase. Since we didn't have any funds budgeted in FY16, and we do need the money to start the operations, it does require board action to increase the operations budget.
I have a quick question. When we appropriated funds for the pumping equipment and the alternate water process to preempt the finished intake, I thought we had associated funds for operations, and this looks like we did not appropriate for the operation of those.
We identified, when we discussed this at the last board meeting, we identified the cost to operate the pumps in our presentation of the overall cost for the temporary pumping alternative, but we didn't have those funds identified or included in the operating budget. So this is consistent with what we told the board last board meeting. It's just making sure that the budget is in line with the
So
recommendation.
this is just the item, bringing it onto the budget, so we've now cleared that port.
Right.
Okay,
But
thank you.
totally consistent with what we told the board. Lindsay?
We did assume temporary pumping costs in the next fiscal year for the operations period of $2 million. Of course, so we're essentially moving some of that just forward, and we won't be unless for some reason intake took a large amount of time, we won't be utilizing all that money. So when we start looking at the operations budget for next year, that'll be a significant decrease.
Okay, great, thank you.
So on the capital budget side, we have one significant increase in the capital budget, and that's an additional $1.7 million in bridge loan funding to RD 2035 to cover the shortfall in grant funding. So if the board will recall, as part of the approved budget last June, we thought that there would be a delay between when the last increment of state grant funding was approved or awarded and when the funds would actually be received. And under our diversion agreement with Reclamation District 2035, the agency is obligated to provide those funds on a short-term loan basis. It turns out that we're going to need 2.6 plus 1.7 million to cover the gap between when the funds are needed and when the last increment of state grant funding kicks in. So both the 2.6 million and the 1.7 million, total of 4.3 million, will come back to the agency. So we're loaning the money to RD 2035 so they can pay their contractor. When the state grant that we just received, when we get those monies paid to us will get reimbursed for this loan amount. So it increases the amount of money that we have to provide to Reclamation District 2035 in the short term, but it's money that will come back to the agency. Any questions on that point?
Yeah, sorry. So the 1.7 here is going to be modified to,
Well, we're not...
or we're just asking for 1.7 now and then
Just describing what items are going up in the budget, and then I'm going to show you on the next slide items that are going down. And to jump ahead, I think we're going to be able to maintain the current capital budget as is because we have enough savings to offset this increased loan amount.
Thank you.
So these are areas where our review of the budget has shown that we'll be able to reduce or we'll spend less than we have budgeted. About $380,000 less for our quality assurance and contract compliance. That's basically our construction management, our construction inspection efforts. Those are going very well. West Yost and Somas, our consultants, are doing an excellent job. CH2M Hill is, as we've been discussing, ahead of schedule, so we're anticipating we're going to spend less on those oversight activities. And then we have $372,000 lower than expected temporary pumping cost. We had budgeted $2 million, Lindsay, for temporary pumping, and as we explained at the last board meeting, the amount that the board approved is less than that, so we're going to save some money there. And then there's a timing issue with the payments to RD 2035 for the joint intake. We expect that there'll be about $387,000 in delayed payments that won't be incurred in this fiscal year. So if we add up all of these savings, it's more than enough to offset the increase in the bridge loan amount. And also we do need to tap the construction contingency, capital contingency, to make up some of that $1.7 million amount. $449,000 used to cover the difference between the short-term loan and our budget reductions, but that still leaves $183,000 in our contingency account, so we're comfortable that that'll get us through the rest of the year. So in conclusion, the capital portion of the budget is sufficient to cover the remainder of the fiscal year. We're not asking for any board action. We do have one need to increase Kim Floyd's contract by $39,000 to $179,000. We can do that under the general manager authority, and that's due to two primary events that weren't anticipated when the budget was first put together. First is increased involvement and work on the public outreach campaign that we discussed earlier. You see an expanded role for Kim in that. And then the second is moving up the dedication ceremony and the event, the planning and preparation for the ribbon cutting ceremony that we thought last year would occur next fiscal year, but as we just talked, we're going to move it up to this fiscal year. And one other point I'd like to make is part of the review of the budget that I mentioned earlier. All of the consultant contracts were reviewed. All of the consultants were asked to identify, and confirm that the amount of money that's left in their contracts is sufficient to cover their expenditures through the remaining portion of the fiscal year. Part of that also includes adjustments to their hourly rates. Most of the consultant contracts have provisions in their contracts that allow for cost of living adjustments and other adjustments to their hourly rates on an annual basis. They're required to notify the agency of those. The reviews that they did anticipated and included any adjustments in the hourly rates per their contract. In addition, my firm, Deemer Engineering Incorporated, has a contract with the board. My contract requires that I notify the agency of any adjustments in the hourly rates for myself, the general manager, and for the secretary. Late last year, late December, I did send a notice to Dr. Marble, and to Chair Wilk, notifying them that my rates were going up. $10 for the general manager, $10 an hour, and $5 an hour for the agency secretary. Dr. Marble and Mayor Wilk asked that I report that to the full board, so I'm reporting that to the full board today. And finally, and we talked about the increase in the operations budget by $523,000. We do need board action to increase the operations portion of the budget. Again, the total project cost, which includes all of the consultant activities and expenditures on the capital portion of the contract, remains unchanged at $204.5 million. So any questions on the mid-year budget update? And if not, we do need a board motion on the operations budget.
Any questions? No questions here. I'd move that we accept the adjustment to the budget.
Second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any public comment on that item? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to talk about the long-range calendar, Dennis?
Sure.
Or has that been...
I don't anticipate, as shown on the calendar, that we're going to need another board meeting in the next couple of months. The one activity that could change that is if the City of Woodland needs to proceed with the refinancing of their promissory notes for the water right. The board, last board meeting, approved the necessary, obtained the necessary approvals for the Davis portion of that refunding. Woodland is still pending. And maybe Paul, you want to comment on that, but that would be the only thing at this point that would require us to have a board meeting in either April, February, or March, or April for that matter.
Yeah, we don't have a date set for that, so, and I'm not sure that it would necessitate calling a special meeting just for that, so we'll try to work through that consistent with your schedule.
Okay.
To be, Dennis, can I ask a question, just going back to kind of budget related? I don't think it requires a board action, but the 10% retention on the DBO contract with Sachem Hill, based on the current schedule, acceptance, and cutover, is that payment going to occur this fiscal year? Do you anticipate that? Was that going to be in the following fiscal year, and is that provided for?
Lindsay, you can jump in if I'm wrong, but once they pass the acceptance test, which is June 8th, they're entitled to their retention, which is 10%, which is roughly $14 million. That payment request would be submitted in early June, and we have 30 days to pay. So
do we have appropriation board authority in this budget, should that occur this fiscal year, and we don't need to come back for that?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of the long-range calendar, the next board meeting that we anticipate, needing to take place for sure is in May, when we'll start talking about the budget. We'll try our best to avoid having meetings that don't require immediate board action, and we'll try to tee up anything that we can that can wait till that time for that meeting.
Vice Chair Marble, sorry, one other,
Yes.
one item that we were not able to include on this agenda just because of the timing is we're just about due for the first quarter treasurer's report, and then probably at your next meeting you'll have a second quarter, and I think once in the past we've done it. My recommendation is that as soon as we have that report, we will distribute it offline so that the board has that information. We could probably put it on the website, but then we'll include it formally on your next agenda. But I didn't want a April or a May meeting to reflect 6-month-old data. So we'll send that out separately as soon as it's prepared, and then bring it back formally with your next agenda.
All right. Bob?
Dennis, I'm not sure if you've mentioned this to the board, but perhaps you could also, this doesn't require board action, but might be part of a dialogue at the next meeting in May. You've scheduled a meeting with the two cities about the transition to the operations side of things. I don't know if... Excuse me.
Yeah,
Give them
Thanks.
an update.
yeah, as part of the transition from building a capital project to an operating agency, thought it was appropriate to start to think about what the agency looks like and what the staffing looks like once we're fully transitioned to an operating agency. So I've got a meeting scheduled in a couple weeks with, next week with the two public works directors and two city managers to start to talk about what the options might be and what their preferences might be. And then once we come up with some ideas and recommendations, we'll be bringing that to the board, back to the board for your consideration as well.
All right. Do we have any technical advisory committee comments?
Yeah, just the city of Woodland has finished its pipelines. We're currently working on our 2 ASR wells. One is complete. The well is complete. We're moving to the second well. We'll have that will be finished and in operation probably February of 2017. And so those are both moving forward. Currently, the staffing, both line staff and supervision, is fully involved in the commissioning and transitioning to surface water. So they are working hard at getting that worked out with the new DBO staff and making sure that we're in full coordination. Other than that, we are injecting orthophosphate at this point to work on coating the iron pipes to try and prevent red water when the new surface water comes online. But other than that, we have finished our cleaning and back flushing of all our lines, and we feel fairly confident that we're ready for surface water. That's all.
Much like Greg just mentioned, Davis is moving forward with our activities. We're a little later in the process, but our surface water lines are underway, and we anticipate our phase to be done in May in time to receive water. I was going to mention the same issue about the orthophosphate treatment. In Davis, we're already beginning to get a number of inquiries from our constituents who are paying attention to what's going on in Flint, Michigan, and assuming the worst. We're in the process of putting together a fact sheet and an outreach piece in coordination with the agency staff, so we're messaging it consistently of what the agency's role is with the treatment plant water quality versus the city's responsibility for our distribution lines and the change in the water source and the impact that will have on the water aesthetics once we convert. So we're working on that. Our other local improvements, our last well, we just awarded this past council meeting, and we're going to be going out for our automated meter reading conversion later this spring. One of our Davis commitments to our community when we had the water rate discussion was to give them real-time access to their water use to help them manage their water consumption and understand it. So we're going to an automated meter infrastructure system where they'll ultimately be able to see on their home computer their water use. So that's a multi-year effort to convert the 20,000 meters we have in town, but we're getting ready to go out for that bid later this spring. So a lot of activity.
Okay, any board member comments? All right, I think we can
One
adjourn.
one quick comment,
Yeah.
just shout out to Conway and RD 2035, as well as the agency and all the efforts to get the Prop 1 money. It's just very exciting news last week, so I want to thank them.
We're almost thought about...
Should have had cookies here today or something,
That's what I
Dennis.
almost thought about playing some kind of victory song or something when we put that one slide up. But, that's been quite a journey. It's been almost 4 years, and I think in retrospect, we always thought that the federal side of the grant funding would be a challenge, but it turned out really that the toughest part of it was getting that last increment of state grant funding. So I think we did a really great job. The fact that we have unified elected officials, our state officials, Lois Wolk and Bill Dodd, our federal delegation, all of the city council members and board members, continuing to write letters and contact people, I think at the end really had a very positive effect. And I also want to just recognize Wes Yost and their staff who put together an incredible application that I think when it got to Chuck Bonham's desk at Department of Fish and Wildlife, had no choice but to check, the highest box on every part of the review form. So a real team effort all the way around.
All right. I think that concludes our meeting. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.